Now, in this video, we would like to investigate more. We extend our discussion of decimal fractions into multiplication. That is, multiplications and decimal fractions is what we would like to cover in this section. Okay? Now, we have already seen the section of addition of decimal fractions. We also discussed subtraction of decimal fractions. Now we would like to use this time to discuss multiplications of decimal fractions. Then when we are done with multiplications of decimal fractions, the next thing we want to do will be division of decimal fractions. That is, we will be looking at the operations, the additions, the multiplication, the subtraction, and the division, all in decimal fractions. So to be very specific, what we are going to cover today is strictly multiplication of decimal fractions. Now, multiplications of decimal fractions follow some rules, okay? There are some rules that we are supposed to follow when we are multiplying decimal fractions. I'm illustrating this rule with one example. The example we are supposed to handle is 2.3 being multiplied by 4.1. Now, the rule here, which I have listed right on the right side here, is that when we are multiplying decimal fractions, we multiply the first number, which in this case is 4, by the farthest right digit of the multiplier, okay? So we multiply the first number 1, the first number 1 here, by 3. So when we multiply 1 by 3, what we get is 3, okay? Now, remember that sometimes you have these multiplications written horizontally. You could be having like 1.3, okay? Being used to multiply 1, being used to multiply 4.1. Okay. Now, if you have it written horizontally, the thing you want to do is first to convert it to what? You want to convert it to a vertical representation. So you will be having 2.3 vertically, and you will also be having 4.1. Okay. Now here we are doing what? We are multiplying. So we put the sign of multiplication, okay? Now, that is in case the numbers you are multiplying, they are written horizontally, okay? So as I have illustrated here, we now have to multiply the first number 1 by 3. Now, notice that when we multiply 1 by 3, we get 3, okay? Then again, when we want to multiply 1 by 2, what do we get? Well, we get 2, okay? Now, what will that be? That will be 23. That is what we have got so far when we multiply 1 by 3 and 1 by 2. Now, the next thing we want to deal with is 4 and 3, okay? So we have that in the next step. The first number used for multiplication is 1. The second number that we are using for multiplication this time is 4, okay? So when we take 4, we use 4 to multiply 3. What we get is 12. We write it down here. Now, notice that we cannot write the whole of 12. So what we are going to do is to write 2. Then we carry forward 1, okay? So when we multiply 4 by 3, we get 12. And so we write 2. Then we carry forward the number 1. We add it to what we get when we multiply 4 by 2. Now, when we multiply 4 by 2, we get 8. When we add 1 to 8, what we get is 9, okay? So what I'm actually trying to say here is that after multiplying 1 by 3 and getting 3, then later multiplying 1 by 2 to get 2, we now move on to what? We now move on to 4. We want to multiply 4 by 3. When we multiply 4 by 3, what we get is 12, okay? Now, this 12 that we have got, we cannot write the whole of it, okay? Instead, what we do is we then now write the 2 and we carry forward the 1. Now, when we multiply 4 by 2, what we get is, well, when we multiply 4 by 2, what we get is a 9. See? What we get is a 9. Now, this 9 stands right in front of 2, right here. Sorry, should be right in front of 2. Okay. So now, what is next? Well, the next thing that we want to deal with okay, yeah, I guess this is what I should have entered, not this lower one. Yeah, so this is what we are having. Now, here, well, we have already got 23. So now the next number is to multiply 4 by 3. Well, notice that in this first place, the first place here, we don't have a number. And so we put a 0, okay? Because when we multiply 4 by 3, the 12 that we get, from it we write only 2. And this 2 should be written right below this other upper 2, right down here. Then now, the 1 which stays, which we carry forward, we add it on to what we get when we multiply 4 by 2, which is 8. And when we add 1 to it, we get 9. So here, I will be having 0, then 2 for that, then 9, okay? So this way, what we then get, because at this stage, at this point in time, we now want to add what we have got, we now add. And so when we add 3 to 0, we get 3. Okay, then when we add 2 to 2, we get 4. Do we have anything to add on to 9? Isn't. So 9 stays the way it is. Okay, and then to write the final answer, we now count the number of decimal places. That is the number of values standing after the decimal place or the decimal point. The number of values after the decimal point, we have 1 and 2. And so we start counting from after 3, we count from here, 1, 2. And that's going to be our what? That is going to be the solution to this first activity, which is illustrating for us the law. And so therefore, in conclusion, therefore, we say the product of 2.3 and 4.1, okay, this will then give us, okay, write it finally as 9.43. Okay, so yes, this is how we do the calculation. These are the rules. Step 1, you multiply 1, which is the first number here, by 3. You write it down. Then 1 by 2, we get 2. Then in the next step, we multiply 4 by 3. We write the result right below these 2. Okay, so in this step, 4 by 3, we get 12. We write 2, we carry 1. If we had got any other number less than 10, like 9, we would write it just there without carrying forward. But now that we have got a number at least 10, that is more than 10, what we do is we write the 2 which comes after the 10. Then we carry forward the what? The other one. So when we multiply 4 by 2, we get 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. And so this is what we have got. Now the next step is to add. So we add 3 to 0 to get 3. We add 2 to 2 to get 4. Then now this 9 has nothing to be added onto it. We just write it down here. And therefore, in conclusion, we say that 2.3 times 4.1 equals to 9.43. That is the first activity, which explains the what? The rule we use for multiplication. So now, after that, we are going to be looking at the different activities. That is, how do we then use this law or set of rules in trying to multiply or in establishing the product of decimal points or fractions in decimal points. So there we go. Here we now have activities. So these activities, the first one being, well, yeah. So the first activity is requiring us to multiply 0.7 by what? By 0.4. So to multiply 0.7 by 0.4, well, we are calling this activity 1, part 1. We are supposed to multiply 0.7 by 0.4. Now, this one is already written in the correct format, the vertical way. So we have already been saved one step. So we just write that down. So what do we have? Well, we have 0.7 that we have to multiply with what? That we have to multiply with 0.4. Okay, so the sign is multiplication, which is right here. Yes, we have to do what? We have to multiply in this first activity. Okay, so how do we then handle the case? All right, so as I indicated in the first step, we will be multiplying 4 by 7. Now notice that when we multiply 4 by 7, we get 28. And so we write the number 8 down here. When we write 8, we carry forward 2. So now the next step is to multiply 4 by 0. Now notice that when we multiply 4 by 0, we get 0. Okay, that is what we get. Well, yeah, we get 0. Now we are done with that. The next step is to multiply this 0 here by 7. Okay, when we multiply that 0 by 7, what do we get? Well, notice that this 0 that we have to multiply by 7, what we get after that, we are going to write it just below this 0. Okay, and so because of that, we will then be having 0, okay, for this first one, and 0 for the second one. This 0 which I have placed in this first position is very much like a placeholder. There is nothing which is supposed to fit inside here. But just to have something below this 8, we have to put something, which in this case is 0, which basically means like nothing. And then the number that we get afterwards, we write it under what? Under this upper 0. So we have got from 0 by 7, we have got 0. The other thing is, we are now supposed to multiply what? 0 by 0. When we multiply 0 by 0, what do we get? We get a 0. Okay? So once again, in multiplying 0.7 by 0.4, we multiply 4 by 7 and we get 28. Now we write 8 then we carry forward 2. When we multiply 4 by 0, we get 0, and we add on to it the 2. So we put it there. Okay? Now, the next thing is to multiply 0 by 7. What we have got should now fall under this 2. Okay? So when we multiply 0 by 7, we get 0. Then again, when we multiply 0 by 0, we get 0. And so, at this point, we now do what? We add what we have got after the what? After the multiplication. So yes, what do we get when we add? So we now add 8 to 0, and we get 8. Then again, we add 2 to 0, we get 2. Then this 0 has nothing to be added onto it, so we write it there. So our final answer will come after this. Now, the next thing before we write the final answer is we count the number of values after the decimal point. So from the first one, we have 1 number. From the second one, we have 2 number, rather 1 number. So in total, we have 1 and 2 decimal places. In other words, we have 2 places after the decimal point, which is occupied. And so we count from just after 8, we count 2 decimal places to the left, or 2 places to the left. That is 1, 2. And that is where we place the what? The decimal point. Okay, now we could put that because that is the conventional sign for decimal point to use. Though in the question they have given us a point, but this is what we have to use. So yes, in conclusion, therefore, okay, as we conclude, we therefore say that 0.7 when we multiply, okay, when we multiply 0.7 by 0.4, what we get is what? 0.28. We get 0.28. Like that. Yes. Now we move on to the first activity, the second question of the first activity. Now the second question of the first activity is also about multiplication. Well, let's see how we are going to handle it. Okay, so we have 0.12. Right away here. 0.12. We are supposed to multiply that with what? 0.6. Yes. So what do we get here? All right, let's see. All right, now we follow the steps that we started to, that we explain, the steps that I explained that we used in discussing what? The first activity, part 1. Now, we multiply this first number 6 by 2, and what do we get? We get a 12, but we don't write it all. We write 2, we carry 1, okay? Then now we multiply 6 by what? By 1. Then we get 6. Then onto the 6 we add 1. That is 6 added to 1 gives us 7. Then again we have to multiply 6 by 0. That gives us 0. Once again, 6 by 2 gives, sorry, this is multiplication sign. We are not adding, it's multiplication. Right, okay, so once again, 6 by 2 gives 12, okay? When we multiply 6 by 2, what do we get? We get 12. So we write 2, we carry forward 1. Now, 6 multiplied by 1 is 6. When we add the other 1 to it, we get 7. Then now 6 by 0 gives 0. We are done with 6. Now we move on to what? We move on to the 0. Now, 0 times 2 gives 0. Now, notice that that 0 that we have got is going to fall under the second number, which is 7. This 0 we have got is going to fall under 7. But just to have something under 2, we put a 0 under 2. Then now the other 0 under 7 comes in. Then now the next thing is this 0 must multiply 1. When we multiply 0 by 1, we get a 0. Then now when we multiply a 0 by a 0, we get a 0. So yes, once again, 0 by 2 gives 0, which is under 7 here. 0 by 1 gives 0, which is under 0. Then 0 by 0 gives 0. Then at this stage, what we have got, we now add them. So adding this will give us, well, let's check. When we add all this, we get 2 plus 0, which is 2. And now we add 7 plus 0, that is 7 to 0, we get 7. Then when we add 0 to 0, we get 0. Then this 0 has nothing to be added to it, and so we write it down. So now, at this stage, we count the number of decimal places. That is the number of values after the decimal point. Okay? So once again, let's use the conventional sign here. Like that. Okay, so we count 1, 2, 3. Those are what? Those are 3 places after the decimal point, or there are 3 decimal places. So right after 2, we count 1, 2, 3. And that is where the what? The decimal point will be. So in conclusion, therefore, we say 0.12, that is 0.12, when it is multiplied by what? When it is multiplied by 0.12, when it is multiplied by 0.6, what we get is 0.072. That is what we get. Well, still under activity 1, we are now moving to what? We are moving to question 3. Yes, question 3 of activity 1. Now, question 3 of activity 1, in question 3 of activity 1, we are supposed to multiply 31.002, okay? We are supposed to multiply 31.002 by what? By 9. Okay, so there we go. We say 31.002. Okay, we are supposed to multiply all this by what? By 9. So you notice that one number is a decimal fraction and the other one is not. That is 9 is not. And so what do we do with it in this case? Well, we multiply 9 by 2 and we get 18. We carry 1. That is, we write 8, we carry 1. Then when we multiply 9 by 0, we get 0. When we add the 1 to it, we get 1. Now we multiply 9 by 0 and we get 0. We also multiply 9 by 1 and we get 9. Then now we multiply 9 by 3. What do we get here? Well, we get 27. We would like to write 7 and carry forward 2, but there is nothing else left to add the 2 on. So that we do what? We just write 2 there. Once again, we are supposed to multiply. What are we multiplying? We are multiplying 31 0.002 by 9. Okay, and so how do we handle this? Well, 9 by 2 is 18. And so we write 8, we carry forward 1. 9 by 0, we get 0. We add 1 to 0, which we carried forward, and we write it down. Then now 9 by 0, we get 0. Also 9 by 1, we get 9. Then now 9 by 3, we get 27. We can write 7. We want to carry forward the 2, but there is nothing to add the 2 on. So we just write the 2 down. And then what else is left? Well, there is no any other number we have to use in the multiplication. And because of that, we now count the number of values, the number of place values after the decimal point. So we have after this decimal point, we have 1, 2, and 3. For 9, we don't have any decimal point. We only have it right up here. And there are 3 places after the decimal point. And so we count from what? We count from the answer we have got 1, 2, 3. And so that is going to be our answer. Now in conclusion, as we conclude, we say 31.002, okay, 31.002 when multiplied by 9 will give us a value of 279.018. That is what we get. Now in the next example, that is in the next activity, or the next question in activity 1 is we have to multiply 0.63. Okay, we have to multiply 0.63. So let's have it right here. 0.63. We are multiplying that with what? 100. Well, what do we get from here? Okay, now notice multiplying this number will follow the same rule. That is, we multiply 0 with 3 and we get 0. Then we multiply 0 by 6, we get 0. Then we multiply 0 by 0, we get 0. All right. Now after that, we move on. We now multiply this one. Remember, the second 0 will have everything of it written under the second number. So now that means under this first number, we will not have anything. But just to hold the place, just to have something there, we put a 0. So when we put a 0, we now carry on with our multiplication. So that's 0 multiplied by 3, we get 0. Now, 0 multiplied by 6, we get 0. Again, 0 multiplied by 0, we get 0. So once again, when multiplying this second 0 by these numbers up, what we get will fall under it. That is going to be the first position for the number for all the products which comes when we multiply 0.63 by 0. So we then have 0 by 3 and we get 0. We later multiply 0 by 6 and we get 0. Then we have 0 by 0 and we get 0. We put a 0 under this first 0 as a placeholder. Now the next thing is to multiply 1. Now notice that everything else that we will get as a product, the first number will start with under 1 here. The first number starts right under 1 here. So that means this other one number, rather this number and this other one, will not have anything below them. And because of that, we will put zeros to hold the place. Then now we start the multiplication. 1 by 3 is 3. Okay. Then 1 by 6, that is multiplied by 6 is what? Is 6. Then now 1 multiplied by 0 is what? Is 0. You see? So once again, we now have reached the part of multiplying 1. So this 1 that we have got must be used to multiply these other numbers, which is 0.63. So as I indicated, everything we are going to get, or the first number we will get after multiplying 1 by these numbers here, which in this case is 3, that number will fall directly under 1. Here, here, here. Yes. So when we multiply 1 by 3, we get a 3. Then the next number moves to the next place. We multiply then 1 by 6 so that we get 6. Then later when we multiply 1 by 0, we get a 0. Then that way, we now count the number of decimal places. That is 1, 2. That is, there are 2 values after the decimal point. And so that means in our final answer here, we count 2 steps to the left. That is 1 and 2. And that is where we place the what? The decimal point. And now, from here, we can conclude that 0.63, when multiplied, okay, let me also change this. Yes, 0.63, when multiplied by 100, what we are going to get is 63.00. This other number, this is 0 which stands before 63, is not necessary for us to write it. Okay, we could write it as this 0.063.00, but we can simplify it as 63. If you leave it this way, you are not wrong. You are still correct, but it is better to simplify it. Now, from there, we can do one more question, after which I will assign you a task to do this one. Okay, question 6 to question 10. All right, now we are moving on to question what? Question 4, that is question 5 of activity 1. Well, what are we doing in question 5 of activity 1? Well, in question 5 of activity 1, we are multiplying 0.0085 by 0.044. All right, let's see what comes out. Okay, so we say we are multiplying. So this one is going to be the sign of multiplication right there. Oh, let me first write the numbers. So being 0.0085, we multiplied by what? We multiplied by 0.044. Yes, that is what we have to multiply. So now we can change the sign to multiplication. Right. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen here. Now, we have to multiply 4 by 5. When we multiply 4 by 5, what we get is 20. So we write 0, we carry 2. Then now when we multiply 4 by 8, we get 32. 32 plus 2 is 34. So we write 4, we carry 3. Then 4 by 0 is 0 plus 3, that is 0 plus 3 is 3. Then the next thing is to multiply 4 by this other 0, which will give us 0. Then again, we multiply this 4 by the other 0. What do we get? We also get a 0. So once again, 4 by 5 is 20. So we write 0, we carry 2. 4 by 8 is 32. Plus 2 is 34. So we write 4, we carry 3. 4 by 0 is 0. Plus 3 is 3. Then 4 by 0 is 0. And finally 4 by 0 is also 0 here. Now from here, we move on to the next 4. Now notice that the first number we get after multiplying 4 by anything up here is going to fall under this 4. That means under this 0, we can put just a 0 as a placeholder. So that 4 times 5 is 20. So we write 0, we carry 2. Then 4 times 8 is what? Is 32. Plus 2 is 34. So we write 4, we carry 3. Now 4 times 0 is 0. Plus 3 will be 3. Then 4 times 0 is 0. And finally 4 times this 0 gives 0. Yes. Once again, 4 times 5 is 20. So we write 0, the 0 which comes after 20. We write it down, we carry forward 2. Then 4 times 8 is 32. Plus the other 2 which we carried forward, we get 34. We write it as 4, we carry the 3. 4 plus 0 is 0 plus 3 is 3. Then 4 times 0 is 0. We write it there. Then 4 times 0 is also 0. Now that we are done with that, we move on to this is 0. So 0 times 0. Notice that the first number will fall under this 0. So there will be nothing under this remaining 2 zeros. So as a placeholder, we put zeros under them. Now 0 times 5 is 0. Then 0 times 8 is 0. Then 0 times 0 is 0. Then 0 times 0 again is 0. And finally 0 times 0 is 0. Now the next thing is this 0. Notice that when we multiply anything with this 0, that is anything up here with this 0, the first number must fall under this 0. Okay, and so from there, what do we have? Well, that means these first 4 zeros, rather these first 3 zeros, will have nothing under them. The first will be this here. So we'll be having as placeholders, we'll have 3 zeros there. Then now 0 by 5 is 0. Then 0 by 8 is 0. Then 0 by 0 is 0. Then 0 by 0 is 0. Then finally 0 by 0 is also 0. Yes. So how many decimal places do we have there? Well, there are a lot, but before that, we have to add what we have got. So, in addition then, when we add this 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, we get 0. Then now we add 4 to these zeros, we get 4. We add 3 to 7, rather 3 to 4. 3 to 4 is 7. Plus these zeros we get, plus these zeros we get 7. Then now we add these 3 to zeros, we get 3. And also here we have only zeros, that is 0 here, then 0 there, then 0, and finally 0. That is what we get. And so in our conclusion, therefore, okay, to conclude, we can then say that the product of 0.0085, okay, and 0.044 gives us, well, we counted the number of decimal places, but we had not yet placed it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7. So from here we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, that is what we have. So the answer here is going to be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 7, 4. Yes, we could leave the last 0, but it doesn't make any difference. So yes, using the rule that I explained in the first part, we have been able to do the multiplication of the decimals from the first question to question 5. I then ask you to do question 6, question 7, question 8, question 9, and question 10, and submit your work.